Joining me now is the party's chair, Anneliese Dodds. So a very good morning to you, Anneliese Dodds. I don't know if you've seen our political editor's interview with Rishi Sunak, but in it, he wouldn't commit to a particular target for net migration, but he did make it clear that he wants the numbers to come down. Does Labour want net migration to go up or down?
Well, actually, Labour believes that setting a net migration target isn't sensible, and it appears even Rishi Sunak knows that. However, what he's not done is create an immigration system that works for our country. Labour said for a very long time that we need to have a points-based system, one which is actually integrated and works hand in hand with our approach to training and to skills. At the moment, the two areas are simply not working together. Why is that a problem? It's an issue because we've got parts of our economy where we desperately need to be training up people in our own country. We can think of, for example, some of those areas of high tech. We can think of areas within also our NHS where, it's wonderful we can access those international doctors, for example, but why on earth did we see the government actually cutting the number of training places in medical schools last year? This is the wrong way round.
Sorry, just to
We
be
want to
clear,
have that
do you want...
points-based system.
So sorry to interrupt, but do you want net migration to go up or down?
Well, as I said, it's not sensible to have that kind of a target-based
It's
approach
not really a
because
target, it's just the
that's not
general
worked for
idea
our
of where Labour
country.
stands on migration. Do you want to see it go up? Are you comfortable with it going up, or would you rather see it come down?
Well, what we would see if we had an immigration system that was working properly would be potentially in some areas where there's a short-term need for skills, you could see in the short term actually people who were coming in increasing in number, but for the medium and long term, a reduction because we would be training people up in our own country. As I say, we've not had that, unfortunately, under the Conservatives. We've got skills shortages, and those shortages not being filled because there's not been the domestic upskilling that needs to take place. And Labour has set out plans for this. When it comes to our NHS, for example, plans to double the number of medical school training places, not actually reducing them as the Conservatives have done. That's a sensible way to deal with this, to actually marry up a points-based immigration system with skills and training. And that's what Yvette
OK.
Cooper would deliver as Home Secretary.
Sir Keir Starmer said this week that he plans to revisit the Brexit deal and secure a closer trading relationship with the EU. Will that mean a rise in migration from the EU?
Well, no, it wouldn't actually, because Labour has been clear that we don't want to see a return to free movement. What we do want to see is actually a situation that works for our country. We have a ridiculous situation currently in many of our ports, huge amounts of red tape, which are really holding back British businesses. They've been linked to also higher costs of food, for example, with food inflation having been higher in our country than in many other comparable countries. So what do we need to do? Well, very practical measures. For example, you've got lots of countries outside the EU that actually have veterinary agreements with the EU. Australia, for example, that would cut away a lot of that red tape and bureaucracy. It's a really sensible, pragmatic move that should be taken. Labour's looking forwards on all of this, not backwards. We're looking towards the needs of our economy, what our country needs. That's what we would prioritise.
I wondered if I can get your view on a report, a special report that we've done today looking at absenteeism by children in schools, more than double the number of these so-called ghost children in schools compared to pre-pandemic levels. What's your reaction to that?
I think these figures are incredibly concerning, and I think they show that the approach of the Prime Minister, of course, previously he said that he'd maxed out on COVID recovery. That was the wrong approach. We should have seen a proper COVID recovery plan in our schools, in our education system for children, as Labour had called for. But we also now desperately need to see that mental health support in schools that Labour's been calling for. We have set out how we would pay for that. We'd pay for it by getting rid of some of those loopholes in our tax system. We would then use that to actually be supporting children in school, because when you look at why children aren't coming into school, there are a range of factors, but one of them does appear to be issues around mental ill health, and we really need to grip onto this because for every day, every week, every month that a child isn't in school, that can ultimately affect them for the rest of their lives. This should be prioritised by government, but it hasn't been prioritised by the Conservatives.
OK, well, Anneliese Dodds, thanks very much indeed for your time this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you.